Breaking news for SSI and SSDI recipients. If you're receiving Social Security benefits, you need to hear this right now because we're talking about potential $2,800 payments coming your way in January 2026, and you could be missing out if you don't know the facts. Listen, I know you've probably seen a lot of confusing information floating around about Social Security payments. And that's exactly why I'm breaking this down for you today. We're cutting through all the noise and giving you the real information you need about these January payments, who's actually eligible, and most importantly, what you need to do to make sure you're not left behind. Here's the thing. Thousands of people miss out on benefits they're entitled to simply because they do not understand the eligibility requirements or the payment schedule changes. That's not going to be you. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through everything: the exact payment dates, the specific eligibility criteria, how these amounts are calculated, and the critical steps you need to take right now to ensure you receive every single dollar you deserve. Whether you're already receiving SSI, SSDI, or you're wondering if you qualify for the first time, this video has the answers you've been searching for. So smash that like button right now if you're ready to secure your financial future and make sure you don't miss these important payments. All right, let's dive right into this because time is absolutely critical here. And I want to make sure you have all the information you need to navigate these January 2026 payments successfully. Now, before we go any further, I need to set some expectations with you because there's a lot of misinformation circulating online right now, and my job is to cut through all of that and give you the absolute truth about what's happening with Social Security payments. First things first, let's talk about what's actually going on with these payments in January. The Social Security Administration operates on a very specific payment schedule, and understanding this schedule is absolutely crucial if you want to know exactly when your money is going to hit your account. What we're seeing for January 2026 is the continuation of the regular payment cycle, but there are some important factors that could affect the amounts you receive, and I'm going to break all of that down for you in a way that actually makes sense. Now, when we talk about SSI and SSDI, we're actually discussing two completely different programs, even though they're both administered by the Social Security Administration. This is where a lot of people get confused, so let me clear this up right now. SSI stands for Supplemental Security Income, and this is a needs-based program designed for people who have limited income and resources. On the other hand, SSDI, which stands for Social Security Disability Insurance, is based on your work history and the Social Security taxes you've paid into the system over the years. The eligibility requirements are different, the payment amounts can be different, and even the payment dates are different between these two programs. Let's start by talking about SSI because this is where things get really interesting for January. SSI recipients typically receive their payments on the first of every month, but here's where it gets a little tricky. When the first of the month falls on a weekend or a federal holiday, the Social Security Administration actually pays benefits early, on the last business day of the previous month. This means that if you're an SSI recipient, you need to be paying very close attention to the calendar because your payment date might not be when you expect it to be. For January 2026, this timing becomes particularly important, and you need to understand how this affects your budgeting and financial planning. The maximum federal SSI payment for an individual in 2025 was around $1,400, and these amounts typically receive cost of living adjustments, also known as COLA, at the beginning of each year. Now, I want to be completely transparent with you here because the specific COLA adjustment for 2026 would have been announced in October 2025, and this adjustment directly impacts how much money you're going to receive. Moving on to SSDI, the payment structure works differently, and this is something you absolutely need to understand if you're receiving disability insurance benefits. SSDI payments are distributed based on your birth date, and the Social Security Administration has divided this into a very specific schedule. If you were born between the 1st and the 10th of any month, your payment comes on the second Wednesday of each month. If your birthday falls between the 11th and the 20th, you get paid on the third Wednesday. And if you were born between the 21st and the 31st, your payment arrives on the fourth Wednesday of the month. Now, here's something that really trips people up, and I see this confusion all the time. The amount you receive from SSDI is not a fixed number that everyone gets. Your payment is calculated based on your average lifetime earnings before you became disabled, and this is why you might hear about different payment amounts. Some people receive significantly more than others, and this is completely normal within the SSDI system. The maximum SSDI payment can be quite substantial, and when people throw around numbers like $2,800, they're often talking about amounts that include various factors like back pay, dependence benefits, or higher earning histories. Let's talk about eligibility, because this is probably the most important part of this entire conversation. For SSI, you need to meet very specific criteria. You must be aged 65 or older, blind, or disabled. Additionally, you must have limited income and resources. The Social Security Administration has strict limits on how much you can have in countable resources, which currently sits at $2,000 for an individual and $3,000 for a couple. Your income also matters tremendously, and this includes earned income from work, unearned income like pensions or other benefits, and even in-kind income such as free food or shelter. For SSDI eligibility, the requirements are quite different. You must have worked in jobs covered by Social Security and have a medical condition that meets Social Security's definition of disability. The work requirement is measured in work credits, and you generally need 40 credits with 20 of those earned in the last 10 years, ending with the year you become disabled. However, younger workers may qualify with fewer credits. The key thing to understand here is that SSDI is based on your work history. So if you haven't worked enough or haven't paid into the Social Security system, you won't qualify for SSDI regardless of your disability. Now, let's address something really important that I know is on everyone's mind. When you see headlines about specific dollar amounts like $2,800, you need to approach these claims with a critical eye. The reality is that Social Security payments vary tremendously from person to person based on individual circumstances. Some people absolutely do receive payments in this range or even higher, but it's not a universal amount that everyone gets. Your specific payment depends on your earnings history for SSDI, your living situation and income for SSI, and whether you qualify for any additional benefits or supplements. Speaking of additional benefits, let's talk about some situations where your payment might be higher than the standard amount. If you're receiving SSDI and you have dependent children or a spouse who qualifies for benefits based on your work record, your household could receive additional payments. These are called auxiliary benefits, and they can significantly increase the total amount of money coming into your household each month. Similarly, some states provide supplemental payments on top of the federal SSI benefit, which means that depending on where you live, you could be receiving more than just the federal amount. Another critical factor that affects your payments is whether you're working while receiving benefits. Both SSI and SSDI have specific rules about work and earnings, but they're quite different from each other. For SSI, there are income exclusions and deductions that the Social Security Administration applies when calculating your benefit amount. They don't count all of your earnings, and there are specific formulas they use to determine how much your SSI payment should be reduced based on your work income. For SSDI, there's something called substantial gainful activity, or SGA, and if you earn more than the SGA limit, you could lose your benefits entirely. However, there are work incentives and trial work periods designed to help you transition back to work, without immediately losing your benefits. Let me tell you about something that catches a lot of people off guard, and that's the issue of overpayments. Sometimes the Social Security Administration makes mistakes, or circumstances change, and you don't report them quickly enough, and you end up receiving more money than you should have. When this happens, the Social Security Administration will eventually catch it, and they will want that money back. They can withhold your future benefits to recover the overpayment, and this can be financially devastating if you're not prepared for it. This is why it's absolutely crucial that you report any changes in your income, living situation, or resources immediately to the Social Security Administration. Now, let's talk about what you need to do to make sure you are receiving everything you're entitled to. First and foremost, if you haven't already applied for benefits and you think you might be eligible, you need to start the application process as soon as possible. For SSI, you can apply online, by phone, or in person at your local Social Security office. For SSDI, you can apply online through the Social Security Administration's website, and I highly recommend gathering all of your medical records, work history information, and other documentation before you start the application process, because this will make everything go much more smoothly. If you're already receiving benefits, you need to make sure your information is up to date with the Social Security Administration. This means reporting any changes in your address, bank account information, living situation, income, or resources. You should also review your payment amount periodically to make sure it's correct. If you notice any discrepancies, or if your payment seems lower than it should be, don't hesitate to contact the Social Security Administration and ask questions. It's your money, and you have every right to understand exactly how your payment is calculated. Let me also address the importance of understanding your rights and responsibilities as a beneficiary. You have the right to representation if you're applying for benefits or appealing a decision. You have the right to review your file and see what information the Social Security Administration has about you. You also have responsibilities, including reporting changes, cooperating with medical reviews, and following any treatment prescribed by your doctors if required for your benefits. Understanding these rights and responsibilities can help you avoid problems and ensure that you continue receiving your benefits without interruption. One thing I want to emphasize is the importance of planning ahead financially. Social Security benefits, whether SSI or SSDI, are designed to provide basic financial support, but they're rarely enough to cover all of your expenses comfortably. This means you need to budget carefully and look for additional resources if you're struggling financially. There are programs that can help with food costs, housing, utilities, and medical expenses. Don't be afraid to reach out to local social service agencies, nonprofit organizations, and community groups that can connect you with additional assistance. Finally, let's talk about what to watch for in the coming months. The Social Security Administration typically announces cost of living adjustments in October of each year, and these adjustments take effect in January. This means that if you're receiving benefits, you should expect to see a change in your payment amount at the beginning of the year. Make sure you're checking your payment statements and understanding exactly how much you're receiving and why. If something doesn't look right, address it immediately, rather than waiting and potentially missing out on money you're entitled to or facing an overpayment situation down the road. The bottom line here is that navigating Social Security can be complicated. But with the right information and a proactive approach, you can make sure you're receiving everything you deserve and avoiding common pitfalls that could jeopardize your benefits. Stay informed, stay organized, and don't hesitate to ask for help when you need it, whether that's from the Social Security Administration directly or from advocacy organizations that specialize in helping people with Social Security issues.